Hey there. Thanks for joining us for Tales of Misadventure, a podcast all about business blunders. On this podcast, Nicole Donnelly, founder of DMG Digital, talks to entrepreneurs and learns how they turn their lemons into lemonade. DMG Digital is a content marketing agency focused on helping manufacturers attract new buyers through digital self-serve. Nicole Donnelly is a fourth-generation entrepreneur, a girl mom, and an avid traveler. Now, let's head into a tale of misadventure with your host, Nicole Donnelly.
Hello, and welcome to Tales of Misadventure, where amazing entrepreneurs share their stories of failure and how they turn lemons into lemonade. Today, I am so honored to be joined by my dear friend, Ben Baker. And Ben is so great at helping organizations communicate value inside the org. Too many of us focus on communicating our value outside our organization. But the challenge is if people inside your organization don't understand and believe in your story, what you do and why, and who you do it for, they won't be able to communicate it to clients, prospects, or vendors.
Mm-hmm.
For more than a quarter century, Ben has been helping organizations tell their story, build cultures around it, share their vision, mission and goals, and drive change, all through developing more effective internal communication strategies and processes. Not only that, but Ben is also a published author of 2 amazing books, Powerful Personal Brands, A Hands-On Guide to Understanding Yours, and Leading Beyond a Crisis, a conversation about what's next. On top of all of that, Ben's also a father and husband and community leader, volunteer, and also he has been podcasting since before podcasting was even a thing. So he is, a legend in the podcasting industry. So, ladies and gentlemen, welcome Ben Baker to the show today.
Nicole, I am so excited about this. Maybe a legend in my own mind. Let's get this started. I mean, yes, I have been podcasting for 11 years, but I got buddies of mine that have been doing this for 20. So I'm not quite an OG. I'm right somewhere in the middle there. But I've done this for a year or two, so I got to shorten that bio. I'm sitting there going, okay, all right, enough. Like it's enough. You just sit there going, all right, I just call me Ben. I'm happy with just Ben.
I love the name Ben. My brother's name is Ben, so I hear that name and it just warms my heart to my soul. It's a beautiful name, and I would just love to start. So I'm just curious about what was it that brought you into podcasting so long ago? What was the thing that you're like, I want to do this?
Well, as I kept joking with you off air, I have a great face for radio. And about, 11, 12 years ago, I was doing some radio work with some friends of mine. And, right when digital radio was first coming on board, and I found that it was just stilted. It was just, it was still that 23 and a half minute process. For every half hour. Every half hour you have 23 minutes. It's okay. It's intro. And then you go out for commercial. Then you come back from commercial. Then you talk for 5 or 10 minutes. Then you go out for commercial again. And then you bring it back. And then you have to reiterate what you said before the commercial and bring people back into the conversation. And then blah, 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 blah. And so for, an hour, you're lucky if you get 42 to 46 minutes. And it was there and back, and especially when you're trying to have a conversation with somebody, because I really like having interview radio. I just found it really stilted. And a friend of mine said, you know what, you're going to love podcasting because you control it. If you want to have all your commercials at the front of the show, have them at the front of the show. You want to have them all at the end of the show, have them at the end of the show. If you want to have a block of commercials somewhere in the middle, you can do that. If you don't want to have any commercials whatsoever, that's on you as well. But you control the horizontal, you control the vertical, and it allows you to have more of a real life ongoing conversation without constantly having to look at the time and go, okay, I got to wrap this up in 1 minute and 32 seconds because the next set of commercials is coming out.
You're absolutely right. I think it really does. The format of podcasting allows you to have those deeper conversations and just get deeper and deeper and deeper, because there is no like you said, there's so much flexibility on how it's structured. I mean, there's some podcasts that you can listen, they're like 3, 4, 5 hours long. I was on vacation with my family this past month in July, and it was a road trip.
Mm-hmm.
We went and toured several beautiful national parks here in the US, and we listened to this history podcast on the Vikings, and it was literally hours and hours, and it was riveting. It was utterly riveting, and it was more riveting.
Kudos to the host who can do that. I tell you, as much fun as I have, I can't be riveting for 3 hours. I'll tell you that much.
I was just amazed at how much knowledge he had and detail about he was able to tell it in such a cool storytelling way. It was like reading a book, but listening. It was just so very, very cool. So I totally love that too about podcasting. And for your audience, it just allows them so much flexibility because they can listen when they want to. They can binge it if they want to, multiple episodes and all of that. So very, very cool.
Absolutely. I mean, I think it's a great medium. And the great thing about the medium is there's lots of different ways to unpack it. You and I will do 40, 45 minutes, maybe a little bit more, maybe a little bit less, but we can unpack this thing, and all of a sudden it can become 3 or 4 5-minute videos. It can become audiograms. It can become, memes. There's all sorts of things you can do with the material from the podcast. It can become training material. It can become white papers, audiograms. Heck, my second book is a series of podcasts. We took 16 or 20 podcasts, transcribed them, edited them down, added a little bit, took a little bit out, and all of a sudden we had our book. And, so there's so much you can do with the podcasting medium that is beyond the actual podcast itself that just makes it just such a flexible, powerful medium.
Oh, you're so right. We like to call it the content waterfall at our company.
Absolutely.
You take that long form piece of content, podcast, and then it creates this awesome waterfall, beautiful waterfall where you can just splice out different video clips, blogs, social media posts, and it just lives in perpetuity, and you can just continue. And from a branding perspective, the more you can get that same consistent messaging out over and over and over, the more that's going to create those, connections for people that whenever they think of this topic, they're going to think of your brand.
Absolutely. So. Absolutely. I mean, we do something called, for clients, we call them mini podcasts, where we find that there's lots of companies out there that don't want a full podcast. They don't want to be the rigidity of being in a podcast studio 52 weeks a year. They just, don't have the time, don't have the energy, don't have enough to say or whatever. They don't think they have enough to say. So we create these 13 episode mini podcasts. And not only do you get 13 episodes of them sharing their thought leadership, or the thought leadership of their people, or the thought leadership of their clients over 13 episodes, but you are able to take that information and turn that into, as I said, white papers, becomes all sorts of different content, short videos, audiograms, posts. So all of a sudden you have hundreds of pieces of content that come out of 13 episodes. And it becomes extremely powerful for companies, that just need to be able to communicate with their clients on a regular basis, but not be in their face on a daily basis.
So true. Love that. Very cool. Well, you know what, Ben, as I was preparing for this episode, I had a topic in mind that I wanted.
Perfect. I love it.
I was like, man, I want to get Ben's take on this. And that is conflict. I saw that you did this really cool show the other day with on conflict. Was really interesting to me. And I recently interviewed someone on the podcast, and we were talking all about conflict and conflict resolution. And I just think this is such an important topic for us wherever we are in life, because with our, personal lives, professional lives, it is inevitable that you're going to encounter conflict. And I think that there's like this stigma around conflict, that it's just like, if you're in conflict with someone, it's bad, but I would just love to get your perspective. I read this really great book while I was on vacation.
Yes, Jay Shetty's new book. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, it's so good. And he totally reframes this idea of conflict. And I'd love to get your thoughts on conflict and in the workplace and all of that. But
sure.
He says in this book, what if we approached a fight as a team? The specter of disagreement builds like a wave in the ocean. I love that visual. As it approaches, it grows taller and more daunting. But instead of turning away from the wave to pretend you don't see it, the two of you face it as it looms over you. Can you keep your heads above water, or will it crash on top of you? The key is understanding that your partner, or whoever it is that you're in conflict with, is not the wave. The wave is the issue about which you disagree. If the two of you approach it together, kicking in the same direction, you can swim through it side by side with a sense of shared victory. Isn't that? Oh,
I love that. Yeah, I love the way that he frames that with the analogies of the waves, because the first wave never kills you. Yeah, the first wave never kills you. The first wave wakes you up and realizes, says, hey, listen, there's something you need to pay attention to. But most people ignore the first wave. And I think that the reason we have the stigma against conflict is that we don't understand the language of the wave, or we don't understand the language of conflict. You have your lexicon, I have my lexicon. You have your biases, I have my biases. You have your goals, your wants, your needs, your fears, your aspirations, I have mine. And we feel that we've gotten to a point in the world where it's the shades of gray have disappeared, and there's this feeling of black and white, and whether it's politics, whether it's religion, whether it's all sorts of things, and we haven't learned how to sit there and say, listen, none of us are 100% right. None of us are 100% wrong. There isn't my truth versus your truth. There's my opinion versus your opinion. There is a single truth out there that probably none of us understand, and none of us will never understand. We can get closer to that truth together by combining my ideas of what's right and your ideas of what's right, and coming up with a common language that enables us to attack this together, to be able to look at this thing and say, listen, we don't understand this from each other's point of view. Okay, let's get your opinions and my opinions, and let's see if we can come up with a third understanding of what the actual reality is. Because none of us truly understand reality. I mean, I'm having fights with people about AI today that are not AI experts. Everybody's got their opinions about AI today. Everybody,
who's an AI expert? It's so new.
That's right. I'm 6 YouTubes ahead of you, so I'm an expert on AI. But everybody sits there and wants to claim that they are an expert on AI. People have been talking about AI for 90 years now. And they still don't understand what it can be. They understand what it is today in its infancy. It's not even in diapers yet. It's just coming out of the womb, and it's in that initial swaddling cloth. AI has got so much to go before it can crawl, walk, and run, but we've all defined that it's either evil or it's beneficial, and we're in this huge conflict about it. But I think the issue is the fact that none of us are willing to admit that we're wrong. None of us are willing to admit that we don't understand, that we don't have a full understanding of what something is and what something can be. We do a wonderful exercise with clients. Have you ever seen a graphic recorder? When keynote speakers get up and they have that cartoon drawing that somebody does on the big blackboards behind you, and it shows the journey of the conversation. I've had that done for me many times on stage, and they're great because it gives this analogy of where you are.
Yeah.
The beautiful thing is we bring that into situations when we're talking about where a company is and where it's going. And instead of, you get people in the room where there's dynamics, and there's politics, and there's opinions and turf wars and all that. If you can get them focused on the drawing instead of each other, then they can sit there and say, well, no, so we want it to be like, oh yeah, okay. And then all of a sudden you get these warring factions collaborating on what the drawing should be and where the drawing should be. And it leads to these breakthroughs based on not focusing on each other and letting ego get in the way, and actually focusing on the problem itself. And I think that's our biggest problem. We're not teaching kids at a very young age how to be conflictual anymore, and how to sit there and say, it's not about you, it's about the idea. And it's not about
Yes.
me being right and you being wrong and the zero sum game. It's an idea, it's a thought, it's a process, and let's work through it together. Like we don't have debate teams anymore. We don't
Yeah.
have any of the tools that we've had in the past to enable kids to have a language of conflict, to have a language of debate, and be able to sit there and say, okay, maybe there is a third opinion, or maybe your idea has merits, instead of everybody digging in their heels. So I've talked about
Yeah.
this too long,
Oh,
but
I
it's
love so many like amazing nuggets. I love the first thing you said about it's the first wave that doesn't kill you.
mhm.
Oh, that is such wisdom, right? Sometimes that first wave knocks you and you're just like, whoa, I got to figure out how to recenter myself. And I loved too what you said about ego, because you're absolutely right on there. Is like the sooner that we can release the ego, the more that we can really try to understand and separate ourselves from, ego is us, right?
Yeah,
Separate
exactly.
you from the problem and try to look at it from this external vantage point, of a bigger perspective of this is more than just you. There's a lot more at play here.
Hmm.
Take ego out of it. How can we address this problem? And you're so right about discourse shifting and kids not learning about how to, see conflict this way. What do you think needs to change? Or, I'm a parent. What is something that I can be doing within my own family, with my kids to help foster and encourage that um, sense of like leaning into conflict in a healthy way and releasing ego? What are some things, some strategies that people can be thinking about that they can implement in their workplaces, in their homes, wherever they're at, so that we can get back to that healthy place?
I think we as parents have got to let our kids fall on their face. I
Okay.
truly think we've got to get kids out there and getting dirty and letting them eat dirt again.
Mm.
I truly admit I am a 1950s parent. I am the dinosaur. You know, um,
You
I,
don't look like a dinosaur,
no, but
Ben.
I truly believe. I mean, my son at a very early age, less than 6 months old, stopped breathing 3 times. Okay, he almost
Mm.
died. He had something called
Mm.
GERD, which is gastroesophageal reflux disease.
My daughter, same thing,
Exactly.
same
We sent
experience.
him to the hospital. They figured it out,
Mm.
and from that point on, our viewpoint is: look, is he bleeding? Is he breathing? Okay, let him go. And a
Mhm.
lot of it comes down to parents enabling their kids to discover things on their own. Because if we're
Mm.
discovering things for them, if we're continually holding their hand and guiding the path, they'll never figure that path out on their own. And
Yeah.
and yes, the world is a scary place, and yes, there are things that we need to think, but it's giving the kids the tools to be able to have healthy conversations. When I was a kid, I was not allowed to leave the table. When the adults were talking, I was to sit at the table, and my job was to be I was expected to be part of the conversation. Adults would
Mhm.
ask me questions.
Yeah.
You know, my son growing up, was on the golf team and played golf. And a lot of times he would walk on as a single and end up playing with doctors and lawyers and accountants and stuff, people who could take the day off and play in the middle of the day because he'd play at 2 o'clock or 3 o'clock in the afternoon after school. And he learned how to talk to adults and to be able to have conversations outside of his own minutia and his own head. And I think the
Mm.
more places we can give our children the ability to be curious and the ability to understand that they don't know everything, and
Yeah.
that there is a world to explore beyond their own set of beliefs, and challenge them on that, I think we're setting them up more for success. And maybe I'm wrong. This is my viewpoint, but I find that the helicopter parenting and the there now everybody gets a blue ribbon mentality hasn't worked. So maybe we need to try something else.
Yeah, I think you're onto something there with this whole idea of self-discovery,
Hmm.
right? Because by giving your kids the freedom, or even in the workplace, people that you work with, if you're a manager, giving your team the freedom and letting go of the need to control the situation and letting them have the freedom and knowing, you know what, they're going to go off on their own. I'm going to let them ride down the street to Joe's house. I'm not going to see them the whole way,
Yep.
but I'm going to trust that they're going to get there, and I'm going to give them the freedom and the confidence for them to figure out how to do it.
Yeah.
And
maybe you tell the kids that when they get to Joe's house, they have to
Yeah.
either text you or they have to
Yeah.
call you to say that they're there. That's not
Yeah.
unreasonable.
Right.
But giving them the opportunity to get on their bikes themselves and go down there and not have you walk them every single time or drive them every single time they want to go 3 blocks down to a neighbor's house is not an unreasonable experience. And I think you're right. For leaders taking that same thing into the workplace is the same analogy we need to be working with.
Yeah, because it's true. You're giving them the ability to self-discover for themselves and have their own experience without any sort of filter, right?
Yeah.
You're not filtering it for them as a parent who's right there next to them, helping them with whatever, or in the workplace, you're there with them, trying to help them solve this problem. They get to filter it for themselves and figure out for themselves. And I can see how that then would then lead them to have more empathy for other people, because there's not someone that they're having to answer to. Do you know what I mean? Like, that's so fascinating.
One of the best definitions of leadership I ever heard was leadership from the middle. You're in the middle of the fray. And some people need a gentle push forward. Some people might need a hand back, pulled back to pull them forward every once in a while. But most people just need to know that you're there. When I was a leader, when I was a leader, you were not sorry. Yeah.
Jeez.
You were not allowed to come into my office unless you had 2 answers to the problem. If you had a problem, you had to come into my office with 2 answers. I may not like either one of them, but more than likely, I'm going to let you try one of the 2 of them or a combination. So you had, I was empowering you. My job is to empower you as a leader.
And I think what's great about that too is that they're building confidence. And the more confident people are, I find the more open-minded they are, because they realize there's not this like self-consciousness about the need to be right all the time, or else I'm not going to be worthwhile or good, right? But the more confidence you have, the more self-love you have for yourself, I think there's an openness there to accept, like, I'm still okay if this person believes something differently than I do. It's going to be fine. We can find something together. The other thing I'm curious about that I feel like may have changed this a lot is because over time, it's like we're in this now society, right? So like social media, people are just tweeting and saying things, and it's like instant communication, right? But it's difficult because of social media and the situation that we have to have these like extended discourse situations, right? Like, it's just like there's a tweet and it's just incendiary, rather than let's like create a situation like this where we can sit and converse. I mean, there's those too.
Yeah.
But don't you find like it's a little bit harder to have those because everybody's just rushing around all the time and people aren't taking the time?
It's the thought process of it's left my finger, so it's not my problem anymore. You send an email, you send a tweet, you post something online, whatever. It's now somebody else's problem. And it's not taking responsibility. How many people on social media actually, once they've sent a tweet out, linked something on Instagram, whatever, go back and actually read the comments and actually respond to their own comments? A very small percentage of people actually do actually walk into their own comment section and actually engage with the people that are part of that. So it's almost like a dump and leave situation, and it's absolving yourself of responsibility. And I think that because of that, horrible, hurtful things are said. People can say things without any retribution whatsoever, and people just move on, and people have accepted this, where if you actually have to sit in the same room with somebody or over Zoom or whatever thing and actually have a discourse with somebody, and somebody sit there and goes, "Hey, Nicole, what did you mean by that?" And you actually have to sit there and respond, and you actually have to take responsibility. and accountability for the words that come out of your face or the actions that you've done, hopefully you're going to be a little bit more intentional about what you do and what you say. And
Yeah.
I think that social media has ruined communication. It's ruined our ability not only to communicate effectively because of the asynchronous nature of it, and things get lost and said unintentionally or intentionally. And it also gives us the inability to listen. And I think that listening is the fine art of communication that most people have lost.
That's so interesting. Listening is the fine art of communication that most people have lost. Oh, Ben, that's so good. I think a lot of the thing that's missing with social media, with listening too, is that you're not seeing people face to face. And there's something about facing someone when you're having those difficult conversations, knowing that like there is a human person there with
Mm-hmm.
eyes and a smile and a mouth. Like it takes social media takes some of that humanity away from this human experience that is such a beautiful thing, and it makes it difficult to listen when you can't see the person and use and experience listening with all of your senses, right? Like you're limited, you're stunted, you only have a few senses you can use to understand the whole complexity of the situation. And even if you are, like, it's usually a one-sided situation where you're
Mm-hmm.
watching a video, right? You're not, or maybe you're not involved in whatever the live event is. So I love what you said there about listening. Let's talk about that a little bit more. What do you think we need to do to be better listeners?
Well, I mean, it's social media is not social. It isn't.
Mm,
It's one way communication, and it tends to be for the vast majority of people. Yes, there are people that understand what social selling is. There are people that communicate really effectively. They engage back and forth in comments, but that's a rare percentage of people. What do we need to be better effective listeners? What do we need to be better effective communicators? I think the first thing we need to do is care.
mm,
We actually need to care about the person on the other side of the conversation. They
yeah.
can't just be some avatar. They can't just be some
Mhm.
title on the other end of a communication piece, whether it's email, a tweet, a text message, whatever. It's a human being. And that human
Mhm.
being has hopes, wants, fears, needs, and desires. That human being is either having a good day or is having a bad day. That human being may have a sick parent. Human being may have a sick child. And,
Yeah.
and therefore, whatever you say impacts that person in ways that you may never understand. And I think the more human we are to each other and the more humane we are with each other, the more we have the ability to have meaningful conversations and be able to sit there and say, you know what? The conversation isn't about me, it's about we. It's about
Mm,
both of us. It's not about just how bad my day is. It's how are you doing? And mean it.
mm.
Like actually ask somebody how are they doing and not go to the next question when they say, yeah, I'm fine. Well, are you really fine? Or are you just saying that for
Yeah.
political expediency? No, truly, how are you doing? And be willing to take the 5, 10, 15, 20 minutes it takes for that person to unpack if they need to unpack. And I think that, as you said, because we are such a busy society, because we've become such instantaneous gratification, and it's about us through social media and through the world, and we see the world through our own lenses, and we are becoming more narcissistic as a society. we
Mhm.
need to we need to be conscious about that and
Yes.
realize that other people are not viewing the world the same way that you do. They don't care about the same things that you do. They don't feel the same things that you do are important. And if you really truly want to know them, you need to understand how they see the world and what are the things that they matter to them if you
Mhm.
really want to have that relationship.
So good. So my next, this is just so great, Ben. I could just like, can we just talk all day long?
Sure.
Like, I
You know
feel
what?
like you and I are like, everything you're saying is just, it's like hitting me right in my heart. And it's just everything I want to hear, need to hear. And it's so powerful and impactful. And it's challenging me in so many ways. to think about my relationships and how I can, improve. And so I'm just really appreciative and inspired by everything you've shared. It's super awesome.
And let me give the caveat to this. I am not
Yeah.
perfect. There are times I unload on people. There are times that I sit there
Yes,
going,
we all
"What the
do.
heck do you mean by that?"
Yeah,
And I really
we all
don't
do.
care.
Yeah,
I'm not a
we
perfect
all do.
husband. I'm not a perfect
No.
leader. I'm not. You know what? We're all going to have moments of our own self-need. And there are times we just don't really care about what other people have to say and what other people need. We just need to get stuff done.
Yeah,
But we need to be conscious of that and realize that should be an exception, not a rule.
I think that's a good point. I also think what you're saying is like, as we're trying to cultivate and become better listeners, it's so important that we bring forgiveness into that.
Mm-hmm.
Forgiveness for ourselves and forgiveness for other people, and realizing we are not perfect people. I'm not perfect. You're not
No.
perfect. And so, like, the more that we can try to really lean into, I am going to listen to this and I'm going to forgive whatever, and come into it with like this eye of forgiveness. How can I cultivate forgiveness rather than, um, I mean, how do you, yeah, I just think that's very, very cool. But I do have a follow-up question.
Yes.
When would you say, how can you identify when conflict is truly reached or crossed a line where it's like, this isn't working? This is really not a relationship that is worth continuing pursuing, or it's like it's an unhealthy conflict. What would you advise for people when they're trying to suss out like a conflict they may be having, to identify, is this something good this pursuing, or
Yeah.
what's your advice there?
Do you want an example? I mean,
Yes.
would
Yeah,
an
please.
example? I mean,
Yeah.
I'll change names and
Yeah.
locations to protect the innocent. But I had a client that was a fairly large client which was attached to a much larger client. It was a police
Uh-huh.
department attached to a city. Okay,
Okay.
so the relationship was intertwined,
Mm-hmm.
and the person that I dealt with in the police force changed. And at the same time, my vendor changed. One of my vendors went out of business. We had a new vendor. And this was something as simple as hats, baseball caps for the police force. And they needed 3,000 to 5,000 of these hats for the police force.
Okay.
And I said, look, we're going after a brand new vendor. The vendor is the same vendor who does Disney, the hats for Disneyland. We know that they're a good vendor, but it's our new relationship. Let's get samples made up.
Okay.
And so we did get, I got a digital proof made up. I had them make a one-off sample. I had the Fat in China produce a sample of it. And this is going back 10 years ago. Had them make up a digital sample of the hat, had them make an actual sample of my hat, had it approved the whole way, had the actual physical sample brought here. And through the entire process, I'm chasing this guy for approvals.
Yeah.
Like he's too busy. He's too important to be able to get me approval. I said, look, we're not going any further until we get and then
Yeah.
Chinese New Year's came, and he finally got me approval about a week before Chinese New Year. I said, look, you've missed your window. These things are now delayed at least a month.
Yeah.
Because China shuts down for a month, during Chinese New Year. And he was grumbling and this, that, the other thing. And we finally got him the hats. And there was a spelling mistake in the embroidery. And I went back to the original proof. And through the entire process, that misspelling was there. And he signed off on it 4 times, including a physical sample that was in his hand.
Wow.
And this was 100% my fault.
Mm-hmm.
100% my fault. I was being unethical. I wasn't taking care of the situation. I was a bad supplier. They weren't going to pay for this refusal, blah, 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 blah. I made all the concessions in the world. I said, look, we'll figure this out together. Let's work. No, it's 100% your fault. You need to take care of it. I said, look, what you're going to do is you're going to give me back the hats. I'm going to destroy them. And we're going to stop doing business together, because he was being unethical. He kept calling me unethical. He says I'm going to ruin you and this, that, there. I said, tell you what, I don't want you walking around with 5,000 hats that have a spelling mistake on it. Give them back to me. I'll pick them up. I had them certified destroyed, because you don't want hats lying around with the police logo on them that anybody can have for security reasons.
Right.
I mean, these were official police hats. And not only did I sever my relationship with the police force, but it ruined my relationship with the city. And it was a $250,000 client all told. But it had to do with the fact that this guy started calling me unethical.
Yeah.
After I tried to do everything within my power to fix the situation and make this about us. And yes, we're both going to take a hit on this. There's no question we're both going to take a hit on this, but you need to take some responsibility for this. And his attitude was, no, I'm going to bully you as a supplier. And I went, I'm done.
Interesting. Yeah.
And I'm done. And you'll look at these situations, and sometimes the customer, you just need to let the customer be wrong. Sometimes you need the customer to sit there and say, you know what? That's your opinion. You've made a decision. That's the way you want to. It's your company.
Yeah.
But I don't have to stick around and be a doormat.
I don't have to stick around and be a doormat. Yeah, I think you've said several things there that I think is really key for listeners who are like, how can I identify if this is a relationship worth continuing? And the one thing I heard you talk about is just summed up as integrity. Is this person operating from a place of integrity, which means they're going to follow through on their commitments. They're going to be honest in their dealings with you. They're, going to be trustworthy and those kinds of things. So I think that's one key thing. The second is there any sort of remorse or a sense of like, we're in this together. I recognize that I've done something wrong here. I want to fix it.
Yeah.
If there's no sense of like, there's no remorse, they can't take responsibility or ownership for whatever their part in is it, that's kind of a red flag. And I think values is kind of one of the other things I heard you say is, are their values in align with my values? And are they, if there's a disconnect there and you just can't get on the same page, and I've had to walk away from clients where those three things were not met, and it was painful. It was so painful in the moment when it happened. I was like, couldn't sleep over it. But at the end of the day, I was like, well, there's not integrity here. There's no sense of responsibility for their part in the situation. And there's just a mismatch in value. So I have to that's what you just walk away and realize.
You know what? I've fired 5 clients in the last 30 years. Those 3 factors are the only reason. As a combination of those 3 factors are the reason I'm just going through them in my mind right now.
Yeah.
I can bring it back to those 3 factors for every single one of those clients. Yeah. Is that it was the lack of integrity, it was the lack of remorse, and it was the inability to sit there and say, you know what, this is our problem.
Yeah.
When it was our
Let's
problem.
Figure it out together.
If it was 100% my fault, if I had messed up, guess what? You eat it. You don't like it, but you eat it. And that's the way it is. If it is 100% your fault, you sit there, you don't whine about it, you don't complain about it. That's why you build margins into jobs. That's why you don't do things that cost plus 2%. And
that scares me.
Exactly. It terrifies. It terrifies. Yeah, exactly. Cost plus 2% is just that's like swearing to me. But you sit there and say you build in a reasonable margin. So if something like this goes wrong, you shrug your shoulders, you bite your tongue, and you go, I'm sorry, let me fix this. Yeah. And you move on. Because none of us are perfect. None of us are beyond making mistakes. None of us are all knowing and all seeing and can see around every single corner. God knows I can't. And, there are times in my life where I've had to sit there and go, I pooched that. I messed that up. I'm sorry. Let me fix it for you. And you just move forward.
Yeah. So good. That was an awesome discussion on conflict. My gosh, I'm going to master class. I'm going to literally go back and listen and rewind and listen again and have my children listen. We're all going to just sit around the dinner table and be like, you guys, we're going to talk about conflict tonight. Listen in.
Well,
That was
I
so
hope
great.
I hope I offered some nuggets. I truly do. You
Yeah.
know, you
Oh, totally. Yeah, there's no question. Totally, totally, totally. Let's shift gears a little bit.
sure.
Let's talk about misadventure.
Misadventures.
Misadventure. We talked about that a little bit just now, actually.
Hmm.
You just shared a big tale of misadventure that you had. And from that experience that you had with this, partner where it just like all went sour,
Yeah.
lost this huge account, had to walk away. That's a massive disappointment.
Oh
I
yeah.
mean, significant in terms of the relationship, the time spent, the investment, the money, and all of that.
Exactly.
When that happened, what did you do?
Well, it was a long conversation with my wife first and foremost. You know, just say, those steaks we were going to buy next week might be hamburger. You know, you remember that really nice vacation to wherever? It might get delayed 6 months. Um, but
We can laugh about it now,
we
but
can
in the
absolutely laugh about it
moment,
now.
I'm sure it was incredibly
It
painful.
was, and it's scary.
Incredibly.
It's absolutely
Yes.
terrifying when you sit there and say, okay,
Mhm.
that's not my entire income, but yeah, it's a nice piece of it that
Mhm.
just went away. And it's
Yeah.
not the first time that's happened to me, and hopefully it's the last.
And plus business is emotional, let's be
Business is
honest. I mean, these
extremely
are
emotional, and
these are relationships that you had, and nobody wants a relationship to go south, and to have to deal with like kind of like the emotional impact of that in addition to the financial. Like business is, no matter what anyone says, business is emotional. It's just like you see these images of people and they're just like all serious all the time in business, and that is just not
yeah.
true. Like, I've never met an entrepreneur that doesn't take some, it's a personal thing,
Oh, I
I
took it extremely personally.
yeah.
I took it
Hmm.
extremely personally. And you sit there and say, okay, what did I do wrong?
Yeah.
What was my part in the situation? Did I mess up? Do I need to go back to these
Yes.
guys on my knees and mea culpa, or did
Yeah.
I make the right decision? And
Right.
okay, what do I do now?
Right.
What now that these people are out of my life, is
Yeah.
this what can I learn from this? How
Yeah.
can I be better from this, and see what kind of clients do I want moving forward? And I think that, truthfully, I do almost no business with government, in cities
Mm.
now. And you could probably trace it back to that one situation where over the next couple of years, I basically got myself out of government business, and I did millions and millions and millions of dollars worth of work with healthcare, in smoking
Mhm.
cessation, alcohol awareness, and drug addiction, and realized it was becoming bureaucratic. I wasn't being able to deal with the departments anymore. I was having to deal with procurement. Everything was RFP. The relationships were not existed anymore. And I realized I don't want that business. And
Yeah.
it allowed me to refocus what I did, why I did it, how I did it, and who I did it for. And
Mm.
I think in the end, yes, I came out of it stronger. But I'll tell you, there was probably 6 months of real self-doubt that came out of that, going, okay, have I really made a mistake? Did I really do what I just did?
How do you armor yourself in those moments? That's a 6 months of self-doubt is a lot. What did you
Uh,
do to personally build resilience in yourself during those moments of self-doubt when you were struggling? What was it that got you through that to be able to take the next step and move forward?
there's a number of things. There's a saying that I have: the glass isn't either half full or half empty; it's refillable.
Mhm. Mm, I
And
love
that's been
that.
something that's been with me from the times I was a young man.
I
Um,
love that because there's no pressure.
no,
There's no expectation, right? You release the expectations of yourself and you just, what is what is. And there's always potential and there's always opportunity and there's never going to be an end to whatever. And that just like the minute you said that, it's just like, oh, just feels good, like a nice cold glass of lemonade on a summer day.
Exactly. That's right.
Yeah.
Just keep drinking.
Yeah.
I was lucky enough to have a father that was an entrepreneur, and and
Same.
I watched him go through the good and the bad and the
Same.
ugly, and we never really talked about it on a functional level as he was going through it, but I watched him, and I watched him recover, and I watched him move forward, and I watched him, take the ashes out of the fire and build something new, with it. And I think realizing that that's possible, and that's what you need to do, is to say, okay, this blew up in my face. This, all of a sudden I got shrapnel all over my face. My job is not to grab my knees and rock back and forth. My job is to extricate the shrapnel from my face, stitch myself up if necessary, clean myself up, and realize, what do I need to do to make sure I don't get shrapnel in the face ever again? And I think it's just a DNA thing. It's just, call me an optimist, call me whatever you want, but I believe that the sun will always come out eventually. And it may not come out tomorrow, it may not come out the day after that, but eventually the sun will shine again. And I just want to be there when the sun does shine.
I love that. I just want to be there when the sun shines again. You know what? That shows just a lot of beautiful long suffering and patience, recognizing that what it is that we want and hope for and the deepest desires of our hearts is not always going to be something that's going to be, most of the time, isn't going to be realized overnight. And in fact, isn't that the beauty of it? The beauty of it, knowing that like those really special moments are so rare and so fleeting, it makes them so much more valuable because of the struggle that it takes you to get there and the character that you've built along the way, so that when those moments do come, you embrace them with such humility. And it just, I think, just makes us stronger to be able to see it from that perspective.
And I think it allows you to appreciate the wins even more.
Yeah.
The small wins and the big wins. It allows you to sit there and say, I did it. I actually, I got myself up. It's not the fact that you fell down 7 times. It's the fact that you got up 8.
Yes. Yeah. And what did you learn when you fell down? Because every time you're learning something.
Every time I've fallen down, I've realized that resilience is my friend. Creativity is my friend. Adaptability is my friend. And I think those are the 3 skills that I've gained over my lifetime that probably make me who I am, is the adaptability, creativity, and resilience.
Adaptability, creativity, and resilience.
Yeah.
I mean, any successful, strong entrepreneur, those 3 qualities are it, man, right? Like you have to have all 3 of those if you really want to be able to achieve anything that's of value that you want for yourself, for your family, anything. That's cool.
It's, it's realizing that I'm here for the long term. I'm here for the long term, and I'm here for as long as I'm here. I'm not going to be here forever.
Yeah.
I don't want to be here forever. I don't want to be 150 years old.
You don't?
I'd
be 150 if I could be like 150, but in a 40-year-old body.
That's right. If you could look and feel like you do today at 150, you'd be marvelous.
Wouldn't that be awesome? Yeah.
As long as I had the money to do the things that I wanted to do and just didn't care anymore, I'm all for it. But as I tell you, getting old is not for sissies. But I just look at it.
Well, none of us are sissies then.
We're not
getting
sissies.
old, man.
That's right. We're all pushing the envelope. But I look at it and sit there and go, you know what? It's the lessons that I'm learning along the way that I appreciate. And if every day I learn a little something, if every day I can touch another individual, if every day I can help somebody be better off than they were the day before, that's life. Everything else is gravy. I can't take the money with me. I can't drive the Mercedes into the hole with me. That's just not practical. So you might as well just enjoy the ride as you have it, and appreciate the fact that one day that ride ends and you just want to live without regrets.
Live without regrets. Amen, brother.
And
I
sometimes
love
that
it.
makes me a little irreverent, but you know what? That's the way it is.
Yeah. My gosh, Ben, this has been such a phenomenal
Oh,
conversation.
it's been fun.
I've loved every minute of it. I can't thank you enough for coming on and sharing your experience and the wonderful stories that you've shared from your own life experience, and just incredible insights on conflict, and from all of the work that you've done with brands and helping them resolve conflict. We didn't even get a chance to talk about branding, really.
Well, we could
My
always have
gosh.
another conversation about
Can we have
branding.
another one? Will you
You know
come
what?
back?
Anytime you
Okay.
want. I mean, Nicole, I love you. I love the work that you do. I love how you
Thank you.
take care of your clients. I love the inspiration that you are on LinkedIn. If people are not reading the stories that you come up on LinkedIn, they're missing out. You know,
That's so
I've been
kind.
wanting to be on your podcast before you had the podcast. You told me you were going to be starting a podcast, and I said, Nicole, I'm in. I mean, I don't know what it's going to be about. I don't know what the format's going to be, but when you're ready to have me on the show, I'm in. So I am so happy we got a chance to do this.
Oh, we're going to do it again. This has been such
Anytime.
a joy for me. Every time I talk to you, I feel like I come away from our conversation just a better, how do I say this? Every conversation we have, I come away from it feeling more confident in myself, in who I want to be and show up in the world as. I come away from our conversation feeling challenged to try to make a greater impact in the people that I'm serving with around. And I'm humbled. I'm always humbled after I have a conversation with you, because you always help me. The perspective that you share always teaches me something that I need to learn or hear in that moment. And you've done that for me today. So I'm very grateful for that. Thank you.
Well, I'm appreciative of everything you are and everything you do. So my thing is everybody listen to this podcast, search out Nicole. Go look at her website, go look at her social media, do business with her. She does incredible stuff. And
so
you know
kind.
what?
Likewise.
Thank you. I appreciate it. But it's, you know what? People need to realize when they listen to this podcast over and over again, and all the guests that you have, that you are behind this thing being the real talent, and people need to, pay attention to you and know that you're going to be there to take care of them when you're off the air.
Oh, that's very kind. Very, very kind. That means a lot to me. Man, Ben, look at us getting all sentimental.
It's a Friday afternoon
It's a
love fest.
Well, thank you so much again for coming on. We are going to do this again. There is going to be a part 2.
I would
no
love
doubt
it.
About it.
I'm in whenever you tell me when. So
yes. And next time I want you to talk all about branding, because I wanted to get a chance to talk about that, and we weren't able to dive into it. But thank you again for being on the show. And as we wrap up this episode of Tales of Misadventure, we're reminded that with entrepreneurship, there's no straight path to success. It's the unexpected twists and turns that shape our stories and make them worth telling. So embrace the misadventures in your own life and let them guide you towards your own blessings. Thank you for tuning in. We'll be back soon with more captivating tales of misadventure.
Tales of Misadventure is produced, edited, and moderated by Julie Basello with Basello Media. Music by Marcus Way. Special thanks to our amazing guests and the entire DMG Digital team. Visit us at dmgdigital.io to get access to all our podcast interviews and other helpful resources. And if you'd like to get updates on the latest and greatest, please sign up for our email newsletter. We'll see you next time for another episode of Tales of Misadventure. Until then, keep falling forward.